Developing a game is difficult. You may be able to conceive an idea, but using the language of coding to bring life to a project is the hardest part of game development. I would know, because I don't got time for that shit. I ain't learning the language of some damn clankers. There are countless worlds. I swear to fucking God. Where is that game? Emblem Tales? Wasn't that supposed to release in like 2023, 2024? Oh yeah, and let's not forget Sacred Legacy. Oh my God, I don't think anyone has heard of that though. But let's cut to the chase. There are so many games, especially in Roblox, that fall into the curse of development hell. Development hell is what the name implies, a pit of agony in which the creators and contributors of a project cannot make any substantial progress. This can be applied to release games too. Deepoken's Conquest update is a playbook example of development hell at its highest point. The developers tried to converge their game mechanics into a MOBA. Don't look at me, I don't play that shitty ass game. Of course their idea didn't go well. A MOBA and Deepoken are vastly different games at their core. This resulted in the Conquest update being so delayed that they were genuinely at a loss for what steps they should take next. I mean, they're literally ripping out their old code and remapping their future update plan. There's nothing wrong with taking the time to polish and rethink your plan, but after 3 years of development hell, I think you just might have missed the mark and lost the trust within the player base. This is one of the only times I think it's justified for the players to be mad. The collective false release promises don't help the case either. What I'm getting at is, development hell is easily avoidable if developers acted with caution before coding. Let me bring a metaphor into the equation. If you're drawing in a sketchbook with multiple pages, you want to make the best of each page. Typically, artists start their work with easily erasable, light strokes of pencil. Afterwards, they trace their arc with ink to solidify the lining of their sketch. And voila. Would you look at that? I know I keep comparing game development and games as a whole to art, but they are one of the same. Video games are arts, no matter how shitty the end product may be. Whether the artist takes the time to properly use their pencil before they pick up their pen is what determines that output. Or they could just choose not to pick up pencil at all and use shortcuts like AI to generate a monstrosity of an image that not even Satan himself would approve. Another option is to exploit the allure of your art. I think you know what that means. I know this all sounds like gibberish and you're just waiting for me to get to the point of the video, but this is a relevant ramble to the topic I'm going to be addressing in this video. Development hell is comparable to an artist block, something I'm suffering from right now while writing my comic series. Artist block is a mental blockade that artists face when conceptualizing their next work. While in this state, they tend to become insecure about their craft and question everything. There's no issue with that inherently, I do it all the time. But this becomes an actual issue when the artist ignores logic. That might sound odd on paper given how art's supposed to be made out of passion, though logic always has its place, and game development requires more logic and objective analysis versus drawing. I say this because Roblox Games tend to miss the mark of making memorable or good games. So when you do eventually come across a well-made game on the platform, you'll come to appreciate it. Yeah, about that. Why the f*** are all the good games not available anymore? I can't be the only one who's observed this over the years. I'll play like a really banger game and that shit gets private in the next month. Like, why? Oh my god. The reason I dragged out the introduction was to explain the contradiction of artist block and logic. Or I could just coin the term logic block. This is probably the best way to describe it. Okay, before I go any further, let me explain why I'm making this video. This video was originally going to be about Detriment, a story-driven platforming game that quickly became my favorite Roblox game of all time. And when I heard they were shutting down the game, I thought I could get out the video on time before it fuck. So not only was Roblox on fire due to the celeb drama, but my favorite Roblox game is now unavailable. My balls itch. Also, let me put in a quick disclaimer. This video is not to bash any developer, it's simply my opinion. Oh my god, I hate doing disclaimers for media illiterate people, but here it is, I guess. Anyways, it kinda sucks that we're in an era of severe polarization. On one side, we have developers who are not ambitious in the slightest and make child slot machines, and the others are so overambitious that they become perfectionists who will likely be running in circles for years. And I'm not trying to say that the developers of Detriment won't get anywhere. In fact, I pray the opposite happens. But logically speaking, privating your game fucking nukes your chances of success. It's the same as privating a bunch of videos on a YouTube channel, which I actually did at one point, and it takes my views. If you don't think what you create now is good enough, what about in 10 years? And that's the question that many Roblox indie developers face. They overdevelop the living shit out of their games, which unfortunately always ends in a worse product. Or, worse yet, no product at all. I mentioned Countless Worlds at the beginning of this video. It's a critical adventure-inspired reboot that was highly anticipated for years, but it hasn't fully released. And the worst part is, the open test of the game felt like a finished product to most players, including myself. It was never released, and it probably never will either. And now looking back at the quality of the game, I have to say, this is one of the best games we've never had. It would have easily been in my top 3, and there are so many games like this, it fucking hurts. This gave me the realization that there are going to be dozens of amazing Roblox games that just aren't going to be released because of fear that they are not going to be perceived in a positive light, or they're just not good enough. This is when the logic block starts. Although a developer might think their product is bad by their standards, the audience may feel otherwise, which creates a disconnect of interest. And before anyone makes any assumptions, no, I don't think a developer should always listen to the players. What I'm trying to say is, developers should listen to themselves and others before they make rash decisions. So back to Detriment, although it hurts to see it go, I completely understood why they did it. The game was phenomenal. Phenomenal? What the fuck? The game was phenomenal, had a great story and platforming, but the code was falling apart, and the combat was admittedly a limited mechanic. Detriment had good reasons for privating, which were explained to the player clearly with sound logic. Thus, I don't consider Detriment's privatization an illogical decision. They had a good reason to do so. However, even then, adjusting the story feels quite unnecessary. I felt like it worked perfectly fine. The combat likely could have been updated while the game was still running. There were only 2 short stages in which the combat was utilized, so they could have made some adjustments while the game was still public. I know my complaints are inevitably overridden by the game's shaky code, but making a whole new game? That's going to take ages. I'm not sure if it's a Roblox issue causing all the problems with the code, but if it's not, why'd you spend so much time on a game with a weak backbone of scripts and add a story to it? I wouldn't say the time used on Detriment was wasted, as the developers could use it as a learning experience, but I gotta say, if the game had a clear vision from the start, maybe the coding could have been cleaner. And that's why I always emphasize the most important part of a game is the idea. The blueprint needs to be set before the construction workers or developers do anything. When I say a blueprint, I mean a blueprint, a step-by-step polished plan before any Roblox Studio app is open. The intricacies of the script coding could be tested in Studio, of course, but there needs to be a goal before kicking the soccer ball. We need to normalize idea managers in video game development. No offense, but if a scripter leads a project, it will likely end in aimless cycles of development hell. The reason I say that is because since they're so passionate about making their vision a reality, they'll overlook logic and say, this is gonna be so cool if I added it, or if I finish this. Which causes massive problems. Deepwoken's balancing is the epitome of, oh, that's cool, we should add that. And you get shit like this. Oh, come on, bro. That's... In what world was this actually there? Scripters aren't good at game design, they're good at scripting. So if a scripter is going to lead a project's idea conception, they need to learn basic game design. Many of them are just oblivious to this concept, so they end up scripting themselves into a wall, which causes them to privatize their work, which may be rough in some aspects, but ultimately could be an otherwise amazing addition to the museum of underrated Roblox games. I'm not saying these games are bad, once again, Detriment is my favorite Roblox game of all time, however the fact of the matter is, when you don't take the proper steps of planning, it'll likely end with a tragic shutdown or a massive fall off. It doesn't matter if it's a good or a bad game either, that's just the way things are. There are going to be so many games that could be considered masterpieces that will never be sustainable due to the short-sighted decisions made. They will be the best Roblox games you'll never get to play. Detriment, Countless Worlds, Emblem Tales. These are just 3 examples of a much bigger issue. However, an equally bad outcome is great Roblox games being turned to shit or simply not innovating enough, like Runeslayer, Voxelblade, Blue Heater 1 and 2, and insert any unoriginal RPG with good graphics with shit combat. Okay, Sorbers 2 is the OG, that doesn't count, but you get my point. So, how do we fix this? How do we prevent Roblox games from being created just for them to never see the light of day? Well, not much actually. The only thing we can do as players of these games is convince the developers. However, I had already said the developers should listen to themselves and others before they make rash decisions. So maybe they should listen to my advice as well, as I speak on behalf of Roblox players. So, dear developers, let me give you some tips on how to conceptualize and plan a game to prevent you and your team from falling into development hell. If you're an indie or even an experienced developer, lower your ambitions. Your project shouldn't go over bounds. Deepwoken's dev team may be experienced, but their core game is already ambitious enough. Adding a MOBA game mode in a project with terribly unpolished mechanics will only lead in a loss of resources, which could be used to fix the core problems instead. Let's take broader successful indie games as an example. Notice how the most popular indie games do one or a few things really good. If your game is story-driven, first write a dialogue script for that story and polish that first. Think about how the story moves forward versus what happens, and that how is your main gameplay mechanic. Do the characters fight strategically? If so, give the game a turn-based combat system. Do the characters fight with haste and fluidity? Well, if that's the case, make a reaction-based combat system. There is room for innovation within those systems, however, that takes much more time to conceptualize, so take your time. When making mechanics for your game, convey the goal of your mechanics with words on paper. If I were to describe, let's say, ZZZ's combat or Zenless Zone Zero's combat, I would describe it as reactionary, fast, stylish, and flashy. Words convey thought, and putting them onto paper will help you conceptualize your goal. Once you've established the vibe you're going for, then add intricacies. Using Zenless as an example again, despite it being a gacha game, its combat has much more depth when it comes to character variation and gimmicks. There is also switching, dodging, and blocking mechanics. Sorry, but this is just hella satisfying, I'm not gonna lie. Having an identity is really important in game development. Don't develop yourself into a wall, and please release your games. We need more good things on this platform. For someone who talks primarily negative about the current state of Roblox games, this video was not a hate message, it was the opposite. Development hell is something I can genuinely get behind why it happens, which is why I'm so passionate to help with this problem. I was enjoying the process of making this video because it was a cause that I believe is important to keep the morale up in this platform full of rubbish. Many of these games are solid in terms of Roblox standards. Some are even good. However, the worst outcome is them never releasing. One game I like that surprisingly breaks the cycle is Fighting. Fighting used to be one of those games that had playtests, and they privated it. But over time, they became more comfortable and confident with their work. They've solidified their mechanics without tearing down their foundation, and now they're hammering down on mechanics and characters that ruin their game. The developers know what they want. They've already made 2 games prior, funnily enough, but they are an example of a dev team escaping the development hell. They have found the true vision they want to strive for. For the most part, matchmaking would definitely be needed, but my point still stands. Back to the metaphor I used earlier in the video, it's like many developers constantly draw and erase without a clear vision, never picking up the pen to finalize their work. However, the sad part is, they never knew what they were drawing in the first place. By all means, I'm not a professional game developer. I just am using common sense alongside of what I've observed in the Roblox developing space. Yes, it is okay to not know where the final vision of your product lies. Though, that's why we have Roblox Studio. And I feel like a lot of developers take their baseline scripting skills and try to attempt to make a game out of it. And yes, when you're making it big for like the first week or 2, it feels nice. But as your game slowly starts to crumble under its failed coding, you will start to realize that maybe I should have planned out my decisions beforehand. So please, developers, be careful, be cautious, and although passion may be your driving force, don't let it overweigh your logical decision making when it comes to game design. So, that was the video. Thank you all for watching. This is one of my final 10 videos I'll be making on Roblox, at least. If you're here to stick along the ride, I'm going to make similar videos on broader topics like maybe Silksong, which is coming out in 2 weeks from me recording this video, or just on basic life stuff, because honestly, I think there's a lot of things to talk about in the world that is not about Roblox as well. Anyways, make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed. turn on post notifications if you want to. And I am Alpha from Alpha on TV, signing out, and I'm out of here.